I was a big fan of the God of War games back on the PS2. God of War 2 in particular was so impressive in its scale, graphics and action. Over the years, I've actually bought God of War 1 and 2 several times. Firstly on the PS2, then digitally on the PS3, then physically on the PS3, and finally on the Vita. And it was really disappointing to me that the Vita version was the worst of them all. I'm not going to go over the stories of the games, I really just want to talk about how they play and look on the Vita. These games looked amazing on the PS2, the CG cutscenes were so impressive for the time. But on the Vita, the CG cutscenes have been completely downgraded, and even the look of the game just looks all washed out in terms of the colours, and just a bit blurry in terms of the shapes and lines of the characters when playing the game. When you consider that God of War 2 was one of the best looking games on the PS2, it's just especially disappointing that the Vita version turned out like this. Even the sound of the game didn't sound quite right. It just sounds a bit tinny and hollow. It really doesn't do justice to that orchestral score. The gameplay is still decent and you can have a good time playing the game, but compared to the PS2 version and PS3 version, it felt less smooth. When the collection was released on Vita, I started playing God of War 1. It was only when I was around 2/3 into the game that I realised that some of the trophies weren't popping. It turns out there's a glitch in the game related to trophies, and even now, years after it's released, it's never been patched. God of War is one of Sony's flagship series for the PlayStation systems, and it just felt like this was such a rushed and sloppy job of porting to the Vita. Given when this came out, we already know that Sony had pretty much given up on the Vita, so they probably didn't want to spend too much money on making a good port of the game. I also wondered whether trying to fit 2 PS2 games onto one 4GB Vita card was just not enough space for it. Perhaps that's why they had to compromise on the graphics and the sound just to get it to fit on the Vita cart, which is still no excuse for them doing this. They could have taken a similar route to Final Fantasy X2, where one game is on the cart and one game is downloadable. I would rather have that happen than compromise on the quality of the game. I never actually finished both games. I started both games but never actually finished them, partly because I was hoping for a trophy patch to come, but also it just felt so disappointing, having played and loved the PS2 versions, to then go to this. Newcomers to the series or people that haven't played the PS2 versions or PS3 versions may play God of War on Vita and actually enjoy it. Like I said, the gameplay is still good, but it's just disappointing compared to the PS2 version. The in-game graphics were not that much better than God of War Ghost of Sparta on the PSP, which just seems crazy to me that they would release this game in this state. It's hard not to compare this to the Metal Gear Solid collection as well. Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 were also PS2 games, and the Vita ports looked perfect. It didn't seem like there was any compromise to the graphics or to the sound or the quality of the game. That was done by Bluepoint, who are experts at doing ports and remasters. The God of War collection was ported by Sanzaru, who were just not up to the quality of Bluepoint. So overall, there's not a lot going for this port. The music sounded hollow and tinny, the graphics were faded and blurry, and the gameplay just didn't feel as fluid as it did on the PS2. Oh, and of course the trophy glitch. If you've got a PS3 available, I'd grab the God of War collection on the PS3, or even possibly play it on PS Now on the PS4. But really, I wouldn't recommend the Vita version if you're starting out on God of War. So guys, have you played the God of War collection on the Vita? What did you think of it? Am I being a bit too harsh? I'd be especially interested to hear from you if this was your first God of War experience. Leave a comment below, and as always, thanks for watching.